let's talk about the lore. Because the final chapter has came out, and I think it was called What Lies Ahead.
Yep, it was.
Now, What Lies Ahead was really not a great way to entitle the chapter, because I don't think it really gave people what they would expect based on that name.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a bit of a hint towards Zareth Mortis, but I think people would have expected a bit more. Again, I'm thinking the end of patch 7.2. It didn't tell you exactly what Argus was going to be or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was pretty evident what was going on whenever Illidan did that. And also, it was like a big thing that Illidan did, you know, in the cinematic at the end of the raid. People were like, oh, fuck, we're going there next. Oh, my God, this is going to be really big. Whereas, again, this time around, it was played a lot more cards close to the chest, you know, cards down, very much mystery. You know, oh, the Chuckler's got the sigils and he's opened the big door. Now he's gone. Oh, what's it going to be?
Yeah,
where it's like what people really cared about more. I mean, people care about Sylvanas, yes, but I think it's an MMO setting and fantasy is really what drives people forward. So the Sylvanas thing, like, that's whatever. But I think what people really wanted was like, oh shit, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. I don't mean a full reveal, but at least something like how that Argus, the end of the 7.2 cinematic was very successful. Now, that said, the lore and the stay a while and listens that we got were all like solid and interesting. So we're going to get into it. Now, this is a cinematic basically, or cutscene, where our characters are, they're not mourning the loss of Anduin. They basically just realize that, not only has he dropped the locket, the little, watch timepiece from his father, compass even. What am I talking about? Yeah. The compass, that they basically realize that, it's imbued with a memory. So Anduin was seemingly able to do that, which is quite interesting because that memory magic is sort of Primus-like stuff.
Well, I think Jaina implies it's something to do with the light. Yeah, she says, I believe it's more than that. I sense an enchantment upon the compass. Perhaps Anduin used the light to leave us a message. Thus explaining how that works. Basically, magic rules are all out the window at this point in time, I think.
Yeah, okay, that's... so basically, we see this situation that kind of clarifies... there we go. Clarifies what's going on with Anduin, where it's not like Anduin is mind-controlled all the time. Anduin is mind-controlled when he's needed to be, and then, he's still in captivity, but Zovaal turns off the mind control, which allows us to have continued conversations between him and Sylvanas. So she's talking about the battles coming up. She's going to deal with the forces atop Torghast, which is the raid. Once you reach Oribos, Anduin will defend Zovaal while he completes the ritual, which of course we see happen. Anduin, you mean compel me to defend him, referencing the domination magic. And this is the bit that's important. Every time he dominates my will, I feel myself slipping further away. Now that is an important line. And he basically asks her, is this what it felt like with you and Arthas? And here's the point. Anduin is getting damaged in a way that it's not the same, but it's like getting a little bit similar to what happened with Sylvanas. That means Anduin's going to exit this whole ordeal being a bit of a different guy. Is he going to be harder? Is he going to be softer? Who knows? But let's just say you're the House of Nobles in Stormwind, and you're pretty happy with this Tyrallion dude, who by all accounts is a bit of a badass, wins the big wars, also has his own personal army of Space Marines and a spaceship, so really don't fuck with him. I mean, what if the House of Nobles is just like, you know what, Anduin? You're no longer it. Just saying. Mm-hmm. So there's some fun lore there. And, now Anduin, he's feeling hollow, empty. Everything you once were consumed by darkness. All lovely stuff. And I think this also, it's like, Sylvanas, yes, young lion, but in the end, the sacrifices we've made will have been worth it. She's still, even at this stage, even with all of the psychological, games that Anduin's been playing on her, they're still playing it that Sylvanas is one of the team. She knows, like, they're making it so that she legit knows that all this stuff is bad. And that the stuff that Zoval does, like, she acknowledges what it does to Anduin, that it's very similar to what was done to her, and she knows that the Lich King's magic comes via the jailer, basically. Yet she's still all just like, I'm not serving, I'm not serving, I'm not serving, I will never serve!
Yeah, I find it awkward that they go through this stuff, and then... Like us seeing this now with the knowing in retrospect that Sylvanas gave up on what all the sacrifices were worth in the end, unless it's part of a bigger game, which doesn't appear to be in any sense. But just all the sacrifices were made to be worth it, except they weren't to her. So then that just kind of leaves this feeling a little bit. I'm just sort of going.
This would have been stronger if it played either closer to or maybe before the raid or something, and. At least this is something that people found in reasonable narrative gameplay instead of completing a bunch of Torghast wings and getting a cinematic that they probably instead just watched on YouTube, which is how they did the previous thing.
Reasonable.
Because they thought that Torghast was like the big cool feature everyone actively enjoyed.
Reasonable narrative gameplay?
Yeah.
There's no gameplay this week.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that thing. Yeah, there's no gameplay in it, even shipped with a big bug.
Yeah.
It's just that thing, after playing FF, it's just, I know that the way this would be done in FF, number one, would have no time gating, so that I could actually just enjoy a well-paced story. I would get way more dialogue. I would actually understand the motivations and everything, just, way more clearly in-game, rather than relying on the big cinematics and things to do the work. It's just that thing, they've given everybody like the seasoning and the spice, but not much of a meal. I mean, there were, like the Uther stuff you said was all like actually pretty cool, and like above average for what they're doing these days.
I mean, their batting average is pretty low this campaign so far, but if the entire campaign was Uther stuff, it would have been great. Not literally Uther stuff.
It's that tier of good,
but done with the same quality, done with the same like emphasis on characters we know and care about. But we've never had, we've not experienced what Anduin's gone through. We've heard what he's gone through. We've not experienced it.
Yeah.
But we experienced what Uther went through in restoring his memories. And that felt like, could have done it with a bit more pizzazz. But it was good. It was enjoyable. It kind of brought you along the journey. Whereas this is us watching two characters have journeys. And we're not even seeing the highlights. We're seeing the cliff notes. Because at least the highlights will be interesting. It's just the cliff notes of like, what minimum do we need to tell the player so they understand the climax of the story?
And then that's
what it feels like.
Is that whenever that's what they feel like they've got to do, but that's all being done by our characters, then it's like our characters aren't saying enough. They're all moving too fast, and it just doesn't feel like a story that you're like just vibing with.
Yeah.
As you're playing it. So I think that is a big issue that the Blizzard team has. They just they have a story they want to tell. Yep. They have a very strange way of telling it, and I think they got into this way with the time gating, and the way the renown bar works as it pertains to their core narrative. And it's like in Legion, when that stuff was going on for the class order halls, it didn't feel as bad because that wasn't the core story of the game.
Yeah.
Wasn't the core story of the game, and I think for a whole bunch of people, even Suramar in its second campaign was time gated like that, but I actually feel like most people didn't. Most people probably were a bit slow there and kind of didn't play it with the time gate. They just kind of did the whole catch up thing. But the way to do a story really well, like think about how people resonated with original Suramar. It's just saying, hey, we have 6 hours of narrative content, so go enjoy.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been a way better way for things to have went here. I can see though, it's like for a bunch of people, you could have had a 6 or 7 hour storyline play out over 2 weeks. Let's just say, pre-raid and post-raid. And people could have really got into that. And, just had that shorter experience. But, I did a big story. I got hyped. I did the raid. And then after the raid, I did the other bit of the story. Maybe that bit of the story only unlocks after you have defeated. Maybe that's the way you do it. It only unlocks after you defeated Sylvanas, which would include on LFR. So for the LFR people, they do have to wait. but that gives people an incentive to hop in, do some normal raids, and then you just have this narrative experience like, okay, shit, all this stuff's going wrong. Well, you got to go kill or defeat Sylvanas, whatever. And then that's what unlocks the next bit of your story. Yeah. And that would feel a lot more like your character is going on a quest instead of this big, weird, disjointed experience where, you know, your Covenant renown bar, which really doesn't have anything to do with this storyline.
Nothing.
At all. It is the thing that gates it. Yeah. So I think that's a lot of it, basically. This renown thing has been I think, a total design disaster. Because it's like they tried to fashion it like a battle pass or something. You'd have that style of progression, but it literally doesn't work like a battle pass in the good ways. It's not like you complete things, then you get a cool reward. Most of the time you do your stuff, and then you have to buy a reward. Or, you know, it's just some player power shit, in which case you just feel like you're kind of begrudgingly going through to get it. So a bit of a weird way how it all pertains to the narrative. I mean, for this, though, what they've set up is like, this is all interesting for Anduin, and Anduin is a character that I like. So there's that.
Yeah, I just worry what them setting up something going wrong with him and how he's feeling more hollow and empty. I wonder if they'll do that justice or not, because I feel like they did all that teasing with setup of the Void stuff, and then they've not capitalized on that at all, and they seem to have moved away a little bit from Void overall. So I'm genuinely pretty worried with how they're going to tie that into anything else. It feels like a lot of the even early Shadowlands setup feels like it's kind of been abandoned. Or, you know, maybe like...
Well, it turns out these sigils are, like, entirely pivotal to the plot.
Yeah.
Sylval needed the sigils to do his thing. And it seems to be very bad if we don't have the sigils. But that was never really introduced, or time was never spent on that stuff.
Yeah.
Which does make it feel like, you know, the core story of this expansion is just doing vaguely helpful things that set up some plot threads. Yeah. And then the actual story happens in this weird, disjointed, one a week and some cinematics thing, but like not, you know, where you're not playing the game for more than 20 minutes at a time or 30 minutes at a time in a narrative way. And I think that's what makes it very bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Travis says, my guess regarding Anduin and the Void, maybe he will give into the Void to help break the domination since the light couldn't help. Like, that's what I assumed as soon as I saw him be dominated. I assumed that from seeing the bit in Shadows Rising. But there's been no continuation there.
I think I know what's going to happen.
There's not even been the tiniest hint of anything Voidy. He's barely even mentioned the light, and clearly he can still use the light when dominated or when, you know, in between dominations, because he used it with the compass. So it hasn't forsaken him.
But Anduin would not use the Void unless it was like a last resort.
Yeah.
Because that's who he is. And I think the thing they're trying to set up with this is Anduin is becoming less and less who he is because of this going on. So what I think will happen is he will be just degraded or, you know, whatever, to the point where he'll return home and he'll be more comfortable using Void and things like that. And I think that's how they're going to bring that in. So less him using Void to break this and more this magic breaking him down to the point where he is more comfortable with using Void stuff. Yeah. And I think that will then spook people in the Alliance and lead to future narrative content.
Like, that is shit, because that's an external thing changing him. That's not him changing as a result of, like, responding to an event or something. That is this uncharacterized, hard to actually understand feeling of being broken down by this repeated domination, because people don't know what it feels like to, you know, be mind controlled and then stop being mind controlled repeatedly. People don't know what that feels like, but people know what it feels like to forsake your principles for the sake of gain in this moment, or to do something you shouldn't. And I feel like that's the thing where if he did it of his own complete volition and just went, no, I'm doing this, I'm making this decision, then it carries weight. But if it's driven by external factors,
that's character, not plot. And I think if we've learned one thing, it's that Blizzard focus on the big plot moments, and they leave the character motivation cleanup work to either what they know about their own characters internally but doesn't really make it out to the players, or it's included in books.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of basically that.